7:46, hello.
Welcome back, yeah.
Yes.
You're watching and listening, of course, to Breakfast here on GB News with Stephen and Anne, plus the Deputy Editor of Spiked, Fraser Myers, and author and broadcaster Nikki Hodgson, because it's time for Headline Makers. And Fraser, I don't know, should we go to the Observer first, talking about how Labour are trimming back on some of their key manifesto pledges?
Yeah, so the Observer article is focusing on Labour is not going to make any big reforms of social care, which is slightly worrying if they're going to be the next government, because everyone knows that social care is one of the big problems facing the country, one of the big problems, one of the big drains on the NHS.
But also one of the big expensive things to deal with.
Hugely expensive for families, hugely expensive for the state. It prevents a lot of people from leaving hospital because we don't know where to put them.
Why would they row back on that? Because that really is important.
It is important, but essentially parties have been stung before by trying to say they're going to reform social care in the run-up to elections. So in 2010, Labour was accused of wanting to impose a death tax to fund social care. In 2017, people remember Theresa May was accused of wanting a dementia tax to fund social care. So this is one of those things, this is a tricky issue where, you know, parties can get caught out or if they present their plans in the wrong way. But it's slightly worrying because it's part of a broader pattern, essentially, with Keir Starmer, where he's saying, actually, a Labour government, it's not going to change much. They don't want to spook the voters. They don't want voters to think that they would be radical. And that, in the current context, where Britain has so many problems that need fixing, you know, where we're in an economic mess with high inflation and low growth, NHS on its knees, you think, actually, no, now is the time, I think voters would think, now is the time for a bit of boldness, for a bit of change.
Do you? I don't know.
I mean, their argument is that they will do it, they'll just do it in a second term or they'll do it later, right? So I think what they're trying to do is avoid disappointing voters, because that happens, obviously, we've seen that with the Tories. So many things that have been in the manifesto haven't come to pass. So I guess they're working from the other position. But I do agree with you, Fraser, it's like, just take a risk, because people want change.
Well,
like, be bold.
If Keir Starmer just stands up and says, all right, well, we're going to tackle inflation first and you know, and say rather boring things like what Rishi Sunak says and Jeremy Hunt, well, then who do we choose between?
Well, exactly, and you know, on the economic front, you know, the announcements from the Labour Party conference, where they're going to have this new fiscal lock that's essentially going to keep them constrained to the kind of spending plans of the Tories. I mean, it's similar to actually how New Labour approached things. People often forget that they said, you know, in the first couple of years they would stick rigidly to the Tory spending plans, and then things changed in the second term, so to speak. So I think that's, you know, but Starmer is in the New Labour mould, and
we don't want to hear that.
But this is a reassurance, isn't it, to people who may have voted Tory in the past, who think, well, the problem with Labour is they're going to spend, and taxes are going to go up, and they're saying, actually, no.
I think that voters recognise that Keir Starmer isn't, say, a Jeremy Corbyn figure. He's not, you know, he's not particularly out there on the left, and people do want things to change. They want to have a genuine choice at the next election, and Keir Starmer seems determined not to give it to them.
But maybe it's just because they're so obsessed with winning, because they're so afraid, actually, still that they won't, despite what everything is suggesting polling-wise. Not that you can ever count on the polls before an election.
Well, no, but there's also a big element which says, do nothing and you're in.
Yeah, exactly.
That's true.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's a bit of
exciting.
It's a bit of an open goal situation.
No, but it is an open goal. If they do anything too radical that spooks anyone, that's what could scupper them. We're a bit tight this hour, so let's have something a bit light, should we? Nikki, let's have a look at this video. Big Brother, which is back. But anyway, one of the housemates, Yin Run, she's from Shanghai. She's never had a crisp sandwich, and she had one, and this is what happened.
This is amazing. God, who invited this?
What?
Who invited this?
Come on.
It is a common way to eat it.
No.
No.
It would be like. It would be like if
It's
you.
like me. No.
If you're like very lazy.
Yeah.
It's like if you were very lazy, you would eat it.
Are you sure?
What did you put it in?
You're cooking.
Thank you.
Butter.
I won't be doing it again.
Bread.
Well done.
How is it, you know?
Lovely.
Cheese and onion crisps, those, Nikki, apparently.
Yeah, that's a bit of a controversial choice, if you ask me. I don't love cheese and onion. I just like a plain crisp sandwich with
do
lots
you?
of butter. Also, you know, crinkle crisps, Seabrooks, not that we're not meant to plug brands, but they're a Yorkshire brand of crisps, which I'm particularly fond of.
Yeah. I love the fact that in the blurb it says she fell in love with the British dish.
This culinary wonder.
I wouldn't go that far.
Well, I mean, she even said, who invented this? You know, some Michelin-starred chef come up with this great recipe.
It's a guilty pleasure rather than a British dish, isn't it? Mind you, you had
I had a chip butty
chip butty the other
on
day.
Friday night.
Are you still feeling guilty?
Yeah, it was so nice. I haven't had one of those for years.
I
It was
never tasted
amazing.
it. I don't know why putting something like that between two bits of bread would taste so brilliant, but they actually do.
They do. It's weird, isn't it? What they need then is to give it the King's seal of approval.
Oh, very good. So people may or may not be aware, but when the Queen died, all of the royal warrants for various companies expired. So, you know, you see the seal on these posh brands like Burberry and things like that.
And HP sauce.
And HP sauce, people recognise. I didn't
Kate
realise
Lyle.
that. I learnt today from the Mirror that even Coca-Cola has the royal seal of approval, or did under the Queen. I didn't know she was a fan. But essentially, that now these firms all have to reapply, and because we know King Charles is a bit of an eco-zealot, he's demanding that they meet certain green targets, you know, to do with sustainability, how they manage their land, and lots of fashion companies in particular really are not very green. They, you know. Burberry, for instance, had to burn a whole load of its stock.
Oh, they did,
a couple
didn't
of
they?
years ago.
Yeah.
So yeah, the king is throwing his weight around, making sure that companies do these sort of sustainable things to meet his approval. Now you can actually get better sales often with these royal warrants. I think that counts more in the more prestigious end. I don't think
International markets.
maybe international markets. I'm not sure. Again, I'm not sure that Coke really needed the royal warrant to sell.
We don't
more of
really
its
know. I
fizz.
don't think we notice it over here, but it's quite nice to see.
Yeah, I guess it is. And it's good for smaller brands as well.
Yeah.
They're kind of coming up to get that.
But weren't we
sales.
told at one point that Highgrove, obviously Prince Charles's, now King Charles's home, was actually making their own ketchup? We never got
they
to
were.
taste it.
No, we didn't.
I've gone online and tried to find it, and they obviously haven't had a great success with
He's
producing
given
it
himself a royal warrant.
yet. Well, that would be a bit of
Well, we shall have to see.
a
Look,
crisp sandwich.
yes, but we'll squeeze in more time next hour. I can promise you that. Nikki, Fraser, good to see you this morning. Thank you very much indeed.
Let's find out how the weather's doing.